Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session about creating inclusive language in technology. I am so honored to be here with you today. My name is Priyanka Sharma, and I am the General Manager of the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. For those who may not know, the CNCF, as it is often called, is the home for some of the key infrastructure technology open source projects in our ecosystem. Our flagship is the Kubernetes container orchestration system. And along with Kubernetes, the cloud native ecosystem hosts 70 plus projects, which include the likes of Prometheus for metrics, Envoy, reverse proxy, Jaeger for tracing, and countless, and many others. We in the cloud native world believe that we're all team cloud native, and anyone who's interested in infrastructure IT, in cloud computing, cloud native belongs with us. So check us out if you haven't had a chance. With me here today, I'm so honored to speak with Dale Davis-Jones, who is a VP at IBM. And I've been so fortunate to get to work with her more and more on inclusive language in the last few months. So Dale, why don't you introduce yourself to us?
Hi, Priyanka, and hi, everyone. I'm Dale Davis-Jones. I'm a distinguished engineer and vice president at IBM. And as Priyanka indicated, I have been leading an initiative around IT inclusive language, what needs to change, why it needs to change, and why now. And today I'm delighted to be working with Priyanka to talk about why this topic is important and how you can engage with us to help move it forward.
Awesome. Thank you, Dale. Yeah, so everyone, we're going to be doing this in a fireside chat style. We actually looked into a video background with a fireplace, but everything was either too scary or just too big of a file. So we're just going with what we have. Dale has a really beautiful real life background of a sunrise, right? Is it sunset?
Sunrise, yes.
And I have a virtual background that promotes our upcoming event and some flowers to add joy. So with that said, I think I would love to learn, Dale, from you, since you have such a long history in this industry, about what has been the growing trend around building in inclusive language in code. Where are we today, and is it very different from where we were, let's say, last year or the year before?
Hey, thank you. Great question. And as you indicated, I've been in the world of IT for more than 25 years. And the topic of language in IT is not a new one. In the last, I would say, 5 years, we've seen Git, Python, and other industries taking on the challenge. And even as early as 2004, in the state of California, there was a request to make IT language more inclusive by one of the counties there. But what has created a tipping point this year is the death of George Floyd. In those 8 minutes and 46 seconds, when we saw his tragic death, I think we hit a breaking point that forced us to acknowledge that systemic racism still exists. In the midst of a pandemic where the world slowed down and we were forced to pay attention to what's going on around us, we realized that George was just the last in a series of tragic deaths and events that underlined for us that we need to do something. And by we mean everyone. We saw the world marching, protesting peacefully. We saw outrage in social media. And in IT, I think as a community, we stood up and said, we need to do something and we need to do it now, right? The world is paying attention. The world is asking us all to engage here. And independently, many companies started this, and many of our colleagues in IT, in open source, nonprofit, for-profit companies. And as I started to learn from others what they were doing and others approached me, I realized that we're all on this journey together in IT. And first of all, it made me really proud that as an industry, high tech, took notice and decided to do something within the purview of our capabilities.
Absolutely agree with you. It's been such an honor to see all the momentum in our industry.
Yes.
People really
Yes.
taking a stand, you know? I mean, GitHub
Yeah.
just changed master domain, and that was awesome in my point of view. You and
Right.
I, we both spoke with Demetrius from GitHub last week, and that was like,
Yeah.
just the leadership there is laudatory. And
Yeah.
I would say the same for IBM and Red Hat. When I was considering whether I should get involved, try to do something, Chris Wright from Red Hat was like, "Yes, let's get this going and like do something every week. Don't try to
Yes.
like." He had this really good suggestion that don't try to like create some large thing and announce it 6 months later when people will be like when the momentum would have been lost. Like rise with
Right.
the tide. And so I agree, like there have been amazing leaders in our industry who've pushed this forward. I have a question for you. I think the most of us who are really excited and we're like making changes and things are happening are on that journey. But then there are folks who may not have the same peak vision into what is the impact of language that is not inclusionary. And so if you are open to it, I would love to ask you, in your past career, right, you have lived through master slave as terminology in code, whitelist, blacklist, and there's countless other examples. How did that make you feel? How did that impact your career?
Hey, so great question. I think a lot of the impact has been unconscious,
Mm,
right? You work with language that, and again, I'm speaking as a Black woman here, that reinforces that your race is in some way inferior. Black is bad, white is good. Blacklist denied, whitelist allowed. Black hats, the bad hackers, white hats, the hackers that are considered ethical.
yeah.
And master slave, a horrific time in our history that unfortunately exists today with human trafficking. We took that horrific experience that no one who is human should have to undergo, and we used it in technology,
Yeah.
and that we dehumanized it and neutralized the impact of something that is horrific that no one should ever have to experience. And personally, this really bothered me. And I really didn't think about how seriously it affected me until, like everybody else, the world slowed down, right? We weren't allowed to go places because of, social distancing. And we really were asked to take a hard look in the mirror at our experience as humans, as Blacks, and to understand what is causing this ongoing frustration, pain, and lack of progress as a human race. And the nearest thing I could think of is it's not just the overt acts and tragedies that we're seeing, but it's the more subconscious, subliminal messages that continuously reinforce that Black is bad and white is good, or that master slave is somehow acceptable. And for me, that's when the point struck home. It's not okay. And look, we're not going to fix all of the systemic racism by changing to IT,
Yeah.
but it's a really important start, right? That is going to have to continue until all language becomes inclusive. So for me, pain, frustration, but a moment of clarity that says, wait a minute, this is just not okay. We've been tolerating for too
Yes.
long. We've got to stop, right? And that's really, what it meant for me.
No, that is so powerful, and you're absolutely right. We do not have to put up with this. We have the power to make change. Let's wipe
Yes.
out this horrific negative history that's in our language and make it open and inclusive. And I think the terms we just discussed are some of the worst,
Yes.
are the worst, sorry, are the worst. And
Mhm.
then as we figure out the process to fixing them, I think then we can like take a more broader look at
Yes.
the language that is used, and over time, like incrementally keep working on improving ourselves. And as society and time changes, as that the vector keeps moving, things will keep changing, and words will become problematic, but we will have a framework that we will have defined, that other marginalized groups in the future can use to own back their power in code. So I think this is awesome. Now, question for you, which may be slightly leading, is I hear your personal experience, and while I have not experienced the same, I resonate with it. I empathize with it. Do you think a large amount of people out there have felt the same?
Yes, I think so. We've actually surveyed, starting within my company, a lot of folks in the Black community, in other communities, and it was surprising to see that how strongly this resonated. And about 80% of the people we surveyed, regardless of their gender, race, or cultural backgrounds, this resonated with them as an important topic. Others came forward to say, I know you're focusing on IT language. We really would like you to look at broader workplace terminology and other terms that really have bothered us for a long time.
Yeah.
So other terms started to come into the dialogue. And what we've been doing is capturing those and routing those to our diversity and inclusion team. But beyond that, when we looked around our colleagues, right, we're IBM, as you said, Red Hat, Twitter,
Right.
Git, Microsoft, MIT, JP Morgan.
Yes.
Everybody else was coming through with their glossaries of terms and looking and publishing that they were making changes too. And I think that was really important to see that as a community, we all felt it was important because as you saw in many of the quotes, words matter. It changes how people feel. It changes how people perceive others. It changes how people perceive themselves.
Yes.
And as you know, right, you work in the open source community, right? You want an inclusive world because that's where the best ideas happen. That's how businesses grow. This is how innovation happens. This is how we're going to find the right vaccines and cures for COVID, right? When you get people who feel comfortable about being themselves, working together in an inclusive workplace. So yes, a lot of people feel the same way, and both the negative aspects of the words, but also the positive opportunity that changing the language creates.
This is so eye-opening. 80% of the people you surveyed. I mean, and this is all kinds of people, all races,
all around the world. Yes.
Everyone is saying this is not great.
This is not okay.
Yes, this needs to change. We have a huge opportunity here. I 100% agree. When back in 5 billion years ago, when I first heard the term master slave, it just shook me. And I'm not African-American, but absolutely had that reaction of, what is this a normal
if you think about human trafficking, I mean, that's not limited to African-American experience or Black experience, right? That's people, right? And if we don't really focus on changing that in subtle ways that we don't even notice, what prayer do we have of changing it in a sustainable way for the future?
I mean, you're absolutely right. This is not there are no boundaries here that are driven by demographic in any way. I'm not going to name the country where this happened. It was not the US, but I was traveling by myself for work actually. And it was international travel, and I get past immigration, and these people come up to me and they're like, are you traveling alone? I said, yes. They were like, show us your ticket. And they asked me and I was getting really uncomfortable. And then they told me that they were actually part of the police force there. They were making sure to check on single female travelers because there was so much human trafficking, particularly of Asian and South Asian women, that was happening into that country. And I was so shocked, and I was freaked out for a second because I was traveling by myself, and I was there for work, but that felt pretty dangerous.
Exactly.
It was kind of funny though, because after they realized all is good, they're like, I was like, should I even take an Uber alone here to go to the hotel? And they're like, yeah, no, this is a great country, really good tourism options. You should go shopping. And I was like, you just really scared me. But yeah, it happens to a lot of people. And this is also not by gender. It's
No.
men get trapped. It's horrible. So
Yeah.
I 100% agree with you. So question, you and I, we've been starting to work together and that's super exciting. But I think the audience would love to hear what is happening. What are the tools people have at their disposal? How can we start making change?
Okay, great, great. So first of all, understand why.
Yes.
And I said 80% of people were for and fully supported that this needed to happen. The 20% they didn't completely understand why, right? Why would you change words that refer to inanimate objects in code? And why does that make a difference in racism? So step one, from a people perspective, make sure understanding is conveyed in what we communicate about this change. Why? Not just for the changes that we are making now, but for sustaining it in the future. If people understand, they empathize, and it will be sustainable. If not, it will be a flash in the dark, and this will not continue beyond our generations. This is what we want, right? We want a workplace and IT language that's inclusive in the future. So the people first, help them understand why, communicate. Second, the process. Look, this is not about search and replace, right? You can break stuff.
People, not a search and replace.
So it's not search and replace, right? You have upstreams, downstreams, APIs, interfaces to be concerned with. You've got to make sure you're making those changes thoughtfully, right? So that you embed it in your product change management and release processes with all the interlocks that you would normally do, right? And so this has to be done thoughtfully. And so part of this process is providing the guidance, providing the forum for people to ask questions, and creating FAQs that keep people continuously engaged so that they get the help that they need. The other part related to process is balancing the governance with the enablement, right? In an open source community, you know this really well. If people are contributing, you want them contributing openly. But if they are resisting, you want to create a forum where they can dialogue. So while you're asking that people are inclusive, you also want to make sure that you're helping them to understand the implications. What do we want? We want more people, more diverse people coding, right? You don't get innovation if everybody is the same with groupthink. Right now, about 70% of the population of coders is white, and then the rest is, other races. So if you want that diversity, you have to create that space. So the business imperative for doing it. Last, once you get past the people and the process, then you have to be concerned with the technology. How are you going to make it easy for people to make the changes? What tools are we providing? One of the things we've been doing is looking at, and we have identified tools, some of which we're open sourcing, that will help others to flag terms that are inclusive. But we have to worry about the data, right? How do you ensure that bad data doesn't crop into the taxonomy and be flagged as racist when it's not? So context, right, is important, right? All usages of master isn't bad. A master inventor, a masterpiece, those are good things, right? Because they're mastery. So how do you help with the context? And this is where AI, as well as trusted experts, like in our case, we have an IBM terminologist and a style counsel working with us, who can help us to ensure, one, that you're not just driving changes blindly. All instances of Black should not be replaced, nor should all instances of white. There's context. And so if you can provide those things, that would be important. Now, in order for this to work without adverse impact or unexpected impact, right? We're looking at tech for good. This is where communities like open source, Linux Foundation, we come together with industries to work through some of the issues to ensure that what you want to change is changed the right way with the right tools, with minimum impact, and what you don't want to change is not changed. And that's really the journey that we've been on. Oh, one other thing I forgot to say is the replacement terms, right?
Critical.
Everybody's working, everybody wants to do the right thing,
Yes.
but we now have multiple ways in which the terms are being replaced. Blacklist is denialist or blocklist,
Yep.
right? And others are probably coming up with other replacement terms. How do we align with standards to ensure that we're placing the terms consistently where possible in the same context? So there's a lot to be done here. And then, of course, there are going to be the skeptics who will say, well, who are you to say that a term is racist? So one of the things that will come in is working with academia to help to ensure that our calibration is valid continuously, right? So that one day we won't need to do this, right? Yes. It will become, built into our AI tools, and into our psyche to use inclusive language first, right? And to use and any other language that does not is not inclusive or promotes bias racially, culturally, gender is the exception and not the rule.
Absolutely. And that is so strong. That future is so attractive, it's like, I want to get there now. But all good things, they take effort and time. And to that end, I think that for anyone who's listening to this, you might be like, I'm on board with this mission, but you may feel daunted by, okay, all of the things we just talked about. Okay, you need to have process, and you need to have, you need to figure out the right replacement terms, et cetera, et cetera. It is hard work. And to that end, Dale, I'd love for you to share more about the efforts we are working on together to make things more standardized, more like a blueprint for open source projects and companies out there to make changes in the easiest way possible.
Wonderful. So we're collaborating. We're going to put together a guide that shares what are the in scope terms, why they're in scope, what are the contexts in which they should be when used, and what should be those replacement terms. We'll collect, and then we'll collaborate on where we can converge on similar replacement terms, working with you in Linux Foundation, working with standards bodies to ensure that standards for our products, our technology, and our documentation. We talk about code a lot, but don't forget, you comment your code, you have instructions for product use, all of that has to change as well, right? So that's the first step, right? Creating the right guidance on what terms, why those terms, what replacements, and where we're going to where we're converging on similar replacement terms, and the context or use cases where they'll be different. The second is on tools, an inventory of what is already available in open source, what other tools have been are others using for content, as well as for code, and what needs to be, and then what needs to be built, right? And so we'll be working on projects around that as well. And then the data, right? How do you secure that space so that new words that are brought into for review are validated with the right level of fairness, so you continuously build on what we've created. And the goal is, by working together with the foundation, with you and our partner companies who want to do the same thing, and the standards bodies, we can make a huge difference. Now, I will say this, we will, because this is been my experience as well as everyone else's, we're starting with focus on Black Lives Matter, focusing on terms that promote racism against the Black community. But immediately we will see, and we are seeing, a need to handle terms that are much broader in scope in the space of IT, And then terms that are used in IT and other industries that may not be in the IT domain owned, but owned by another industry. So pretty soon you'll see, a need for more and more to join into our community. And I think this is where it gets exciting, because then the impact can be bigger. So looking forward to working with you, putting the guidance together for those who are, who are thinking about it, who are on the journey, the lessons learned. And then last but least, not just what to change, but when to change it. Do you do right? So those are the key things. All right. So
Absolutely.
Anything else? Any comments on that?
No, this was so powerful, and I hope those listening got a unique perspective from a successful who happens to be African-American woman who's spearleading so much in our industry. I also hope that folks understood the importance of not going ready, fire, aim in this initiative, because I've had that reaction of wanting to just go fix everything, but that will lead to more problems than not. So we all have to move together, and that's our challenge. To that end, I just wanted to share very quickly a place where we will meet again. Dale will be there, I will be there, and many other folks who are working hard on this will be there. So I'm going to share my screen very, very fast and show you. The CNCF organizes KubeCon Cloud Native Con, which actually is the largest open source conference in the world. And open source is where every contribution matters. Well, code is where every contribution matters. So we take this super important. And in the schedule, we have a space for us all to meet and talk about this on Thursday, November 19th. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through really quickly. Which is the Inclusive Language in Code Community Meeting. It's at 12 p.m. Eastern, which is 9 a.m. Pacific. And I highly recommend people come to this open meeting. It will be held on Zoom, where we will discuss the specifics that are going on to help people move lockstep. So we'll discuss the terms, we'll discuss alternatives that are good for many parties, and then change management. So highly encourage you folks to come. And for those who want to know the name of our initiative, we just went live on the website, which is a start of the Inclusive Naming Project. So you can go here for updates. There's a link to the event. There'll be more stuff coming here, all that Dale's been talking about. So with that all said, thank you so much, Dale, for sharing your wisdom. Thank you so much to the folks who were interested and listened. We all want change together, and we will all do it together. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.